Can you give tips to a person right now on how to start investigating themselves?
Yeah, I mean, think about where you. So a lot of times we anticipate, all right, I'm gonna do this, and this is what's gonna happen, right? It's like, this is gonna be dope. Watch this. You go out there, you do this, and then the result wasn't quite what you was looking for. You know what I'm saying? Now you have to ask yourself, what else could I have done? You know what I mean? Or is this really for me? You know? And that's not a wrong question to ask yourself, you know, because you have to be reaffirmed in either your ability to persevere and say, I'm going to continue regardless of the outcome because I want this that bad, or I know there's a few things that I thought about doing, but I didn't do, and I probably should have did that. I need to add this. You know what I mean? How do I make this more impactful? What was the response that I got from it? You know what I mean? What response did I get from that result? Did I follow up with that person to kind of interrogate them a little bit more about what they might have thought was missing from that? Did I interrogate myself, you know, to find out, yo, you remember that a couple nights you really didn't do what you were supposed to do in preparation, and you know you could have done those things, but you opted to do something else, you know? Or did I even spend as much time as I could have, you know, on a whole?
I learned from a former guest named Malik Mooney. He said something, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, and I'm changing it up a little bit. He actually said, quote, "You don't have to be a bad person to be bad for me." So I'm looking at that. What you're saying is you don't have to be a bad job or a bad situation to be bad for me. And you're telling people to evaluate that and make sure that your light is not going out no matter how great the optics look to everyone else. Is it for you? And that's where you can start first.
And I think sometimes success is very, it's interesting because sometimes short-term success can ruin you long-term. You know what I mean? And because it can sometimes make you less hungry and less investigative about what could I have done better. And sometimes when we fail, the course of where we go from there is determined on what did we do with that failure. How did I, look at that failure? How did I evaluate what my opportunities were to do better or be better? Or maybe I'm thinking too small. Maybe I need to think bigger. You know what I mean?
Do you think, or have you ever written down your failures? Because so many people like to dismiss their failures and keep going. But have you ever written down your failures and internalized them and really read over them and said, this is where I failed and I need to evaluate my mistakes? Have you ever written those down, or really people wallow in their failures and say, I can't believe I failed. But have you actually written down your failures and said, I failed at this, and then did a summary on why?
I haven't.
You probably feel like you're cheating the creative process.
I think you might be right. I mean, I write notes in my phone. I do that. You know what I mean? And I write stuff down that is relevant to like a current project to try to organize my thoughts in the moment. But I think in terms of the long term, if I look back, I definitely could probably learn a little bit more from having written down what I think might have been failures. But sometimes failures, it's not as clearly defined as just you didn't win. A lot of this stuff is already in front of us, but unfortunately we define it based on how it's presented to us. But we have to realize that you have to look at it good. You got to look at it good and receive it. You know what I mean? And the people who are seeking and good listeners or are looking for the gems and don't define how they find it based on how it is presented to them. Because understand, a bum on the street can drop jewels on you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? A thief, a prisoner, some of the people that we would say to ourselves, that person has no expertise whatsoever. What can I learn from him? You got to understand that you can learn from everybody.
Wow. Hey, listen.
And it's hidden because they give us white characters for the Count of Monte Cristo. Yeah. They give us white characters for the Three Musketeers. But you got to understand, Alexander Dumas wasn't going to write a book about black people being, doing great things and being successful. But if you think about the characters in the Count of Monte Cristo, not the Count of Monte Cristo, if you think about Count of Monte Cristo and the Three Musketeers, those characters sound like black characters. A man who's innocent, who's thrown in jail. I got one for you. The Three Musketeers.